This is the October 4th deposition of Tonia Werner. Now, James Owens is claiming that Sarah Boone deserves a whole new trial because she changed what she said at the actual trial itself. So we're going to go through this right now. I'm doing this as soon as I can before bed. I'm probably not even going to be awake for whenever this comes out. I know a lot of people are going to have a rough morning, so I want to put something out there people can maybe be distracted by. Dr. Werner. Yes, sir. Yes, this is James Owen. Should be Owens again. As you know, I represent Sarah Boone. Yes, sir. Would you please state your full name and spell your last name? My name is Tonia, Tonia, Werner, Werner. Can you give us your address? I redacted that. What is the name of the facility where you work? Meridian Behavior Healthcare. Are you a partner there or do you own the business? No, it's a non-profit. I work for them. What do you mean by non-profit? It's a not-for-profit. What? Really? Okay, you don't get paid a salary by them? No, I do. It's a non-profit organization, like the Salvation Army is non-profit. It's a non-profit organization, a community mental health center. Okay. How long have you worked for them? I'm going to be honest. I really don't think James Owens understood and just went okay and moved on. Almost 10 years since 2015. All right. What did you do before that? I was at the University of Florida on faculty as an associate professor and the vice chairman of the Department of Psychiatry and the director of the Forensic Institute at the University of Florida. How long were you there? 1998 to 2015 when I retired, and prior to that, I was in my psychiatric training. And where was that? I did my residency at Connecticut Valley Hospital in Middletown, Connecticut, under the auspices of Yale University. I did 4 years of training there, and then I came to the University of Florida and did a 1-year fellowship in forensic psychiatry. I am board certified in general and forensic psychiatry. And what did you do prior to the residency? I attended medical school. Where did you go to medical school? American University of the Caribbean. That was a cough. Okay, so American University in the Caribbean? Of the Caribbean, correct. Where is that? At the time I went there, it was in Plainview, Texas. I believe now it's on St. Martin. But it had been hit by a hurricane, and they had relocated to the mainland of the United States at the time that I attended. Why did you choose that school? I had not. I actually had not finished my undergraduate degree. They accepted me. I got waitlisted at the University of South Florida, and they accepted me at American University of the Caribbean. And they were in Texas, and so I was anxious to go, and I went. And prior to that, during my first semester of medical school, I completed my bachelor's degree. Where did you complete your bachelor's degree? So I got my bachelor's degree from the University of South Florida, but I took a couple of courses to complete it through Wayland Baptist University, which is where the medical school was being housed at the time on the mainland. So you were able to complete your bachelor's there in Texas and stayed on the campus whereupon there was a Zoom technicality after which the following transpired, whereupon the previous question was read back by the reporter after the following transpired by Mr. Owens. Dr. Werner? I didn't live on campus. I had housing. I had a house that I rented off of campus. But our courses, we used their facility. We leased, I guess the school leased part of the facility of the university. And who is we? What do you mean, who is we? You just said we. We leased. The school. No, then I changed it to the school because I had nothing to do with it. So I assume the school leased part of the facility of Baptist University where we were housed. Okay, so you got accepted. You finished off your undergrad. You got accepted. The school was right there, and you just started your postgraduate. Correct. I did my first 2 years, in a classroom learning there in Texas, and then went to the Connecticut and did all the clinicals in Connecticut. Okay. Now, as it relates to Sarah Boone, my client, obviously understand that you evaluated her, was it yesterday or the day before? Day before yesterday, correct. Okay. And that was at the Orange County Jail? Yes. And that was with the 2 prosecutors and myself. That's correct. How long was the evaluation? It was approximately 2 hours and 20 minutes. Did you do any testing? I did a mental status examination. What is that mental status examination called? A mental status examination. That's it. That's it. That's what it's called. And what else did you do besides that test? I interviewed her. Is that customary in the field? Yes. Now, how long have you been on this case? Oh, I'm not sure when they first contacted me, in all honesty. Well, the event occurred in February 2020. I was. Do you know if? No, I was. Very James Owens here. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. This feels like him, right? And this is really, to me, leaning into the argument the prosecutor's like, he didn't ask the right questions. This is just not sounding good to me. Maybe I don't know how depositions work, because I don't, but it doesn't sound good. Do you know if you were contacted during the year of 2020? No, sir, I was not. I was contacted this calendar year, so you haven't been involved in the case at all until 2024. That's correct. I seem to remember that they had retained an expert, a potential rebuttal expert, prior to me coming in, and came in on the case in late August of 2024. I seem to recall that they already had a rebuttal witness. You were not involved in any way prior to me coming in August of 2024. Oh, I'm not sure. I said this calendar year, which is 2024. So I very well may have been on board before you came on, yeah. Do you have any notes that would reflect, in your file about when you came on? It would probably be on my calendar somewhere when I first had a phone conference with them or an email. I'll have to look for it. Can you check? Can you check that you get back to me either or the prosecutor about when you first came on the case? Yes. All right. And what all did you get up to speed on the case to be able to evaluate her and then diagnose her and then render opinions? So I reviewed some documents that were referred to me, then I evaluated her at the jail. All right, how many documents were you asked to review? I was provided with the Orange County Sheriff's Office investigative report. How many pages is that? There are several different printouts she's examining. It is 150. Okay. No, I take that back. 50. I have 58 pages of that. Okay. I have a transcript of a taped interview of Sarah Boone. Is that the transcript of the 2-hour interrogation in the Orange County Jail? I don't know if it was an interrogation or not. The title of the document is Transcript of Taped Interview of Sarah Boone. It was from February 24th of 2020. How many pages was that? Again, there is several different printouts, and it is, the last page I have is 177. Okay, what other documents did you review? I have another transcript of a taped interview of Sarah Boone. This one I have dated as February 25th, and that one is 394 pages. But it may be a continuation of the other ones because it's not dated at the top. I handwrote that on, so I don't know. Let me see at the back. If I got it from the back of it, where did the date come from? No, it's not dated on the back either, so I'm not sure where it got that date from. It may be just miswritten, and it may have been also part of the February 24th one. Okay, go ahead. Okay, go ahead. So then I have medical records from Aspire Health, and I have, hold on, the medical records. Number 4 document was the medical records from Aspire Health, who was treated on the records. Sarah Boone. You have the dates of treatment, October 25th, 2018. The last one, or the first one, is January 23rd, 2018. Okay, I believe that was number 4, the medical records. What next? Then I have the medical records from Cox Health, spell Cox, C-I-O-X. So this is Advent Health, it looks like. And who was the patient? Sarah Boone. What are the dates? January 13th, 2020 was the first one, and let me be sure, January 23rd, 2018 was the last one, it appears. Here's another one from, because they're not in order, I guess, July 2009. I mean, I don't have the dates written down, so I'm flipping through it. Maybe that's supposed to be 2019. Was that for some type of psychological? That was an emergency room. I've lost that page already. Some of them are psychiatric and some of them are not. July 2009 was an emergency room visit when it started on syndamycin and antibiotics, so I doubt it was psychiatric. Okay, anything else about those records? No. All right, and what else did you review? Then there were two printed out sections. It looks like text messages and location pings off of a cell phone, I assume. They're not labeled, it's just there. There's 2 of them. And what are the dates, beginning and ending on both of them? One starts on December 25th, 2019 and goes through February 24th, 2020. And those text messages from Sarah Boone's phone? You know what? The numbers aren't labeled, so I would assume it's from reading the text messages, but it's not labeled that way. Can you tell when Sarah Boone is texting and when someone else is responding back? Well, it says who the number it's coming from, so it shows like if it's going from that phone or to the phone, yes, there's a way to tell that. But I can't tell you who is texting. Were you able to tell when Sarah Boone was texting? When the messages are coming from her phone, what I assume to be her phone, yes. Yeah. You considered that in your evaluation? No. You're asking what I reviewed. I'm telling you what I reviewed. Okay, you didn't consider these text messages in your evaluation. I was aware of them, but they're not necessarily overly relevant. Sorry for the cough. I've been up a lot. Okay, so the first set was from December 25th, 2019 to February 24th, 2020. Correct. And then the second set of texts, February 15th, 2018 through December 23rd, 2019. And did you consider those text messages in your evaluation? I mean, I read through them, so I'm aware what's in there. And I'm aware that they, had a relationship issues, that she was, taking pictures and were fighting over the text. And, I'm aware of relationship issues going on back and forth via the text. Was there anything from those texts that stuck out to you that caused you to pause and feel like that might have been an impact on your evaluation? No. As I said, it made me aware that they had a volatile relationship. I mean, in some of them, there were capital letters coming from her cursing at him, calling him an idiot, a effing idiot, for overdrafting. There's some referencing domestic violence and, injuries. I mean, there are different text messages in there that demonstrate that they had a violent relationship, a volatile relationship. Would you consider that in your evaluation? Of course. Okay, anything that sticks out to you other than what you've indicated? No. All right, what else did you review? That's it. Okay, so you've got the number one, you've got the investigative report you said was 58 pages. Number two, you've got a transcript that was of Sarah Boone, an interview with Sarah Boone that was 177 pages. Number three, I've got a transcript of an interview with Sarah Boone that was 394 pages. Number four, I've got the medical records from Aspire Health, patient with Sarah Boone, the dates for January to October 2018. Number five, I've got medical records for Sarah Boone was a patient at Cox Health, or Advent Health. It looks like the records were from potentially July of 2009 all the way up to January 13th of 2020. And then number six, I've got a printout of text messages, two sets, one that are from December of 2019 and February 2020, which you believe you can interpret the messages that came from Sarah Boone. Then a second set from, no, that's misstating what I said. Tell me what you mean then. I said that I can tell which messages came from the phones attributed to Sarah Boone. I did not say that I knew they came from Sarah Boone. Do you have any reason to believe they wouldn't have come from Sarah Boone, the ones that you attributed to her phone? I have no idea who typed them in. How would I know? Okay, but there's nothing to indicate that they wouldn't have come from Sarah Boone if they were from Sarah Boone's phone, correct? I would assume so, but I'm not stating that I know that they came from Sarah. I understand. I don't think he does. Okay. But you've been advised that that's the number that was Sarah Boone's phone number. Nobody told me that. I assumed from when I received the records in reviewing them that was her phone. Okay. That this was Sarah's phone number. Okay. And then it looks like there was a second set of printout of text messages from February 15th to 2018 to December 23rd, 2019 that appear to be text messages relating to Sarah Boone's phone as well. Correct, the same number. And from that last, number six, the printout of the text messages that you determined were having relationship issues or a volatile relationship they were fighting, there were pictures that would indicate it was a volatile relationship. Yes, there were descriptions of things. Anything else that you can glean from those text messages, those two sets of text messages about Sarah Boone, or no? Okay, anything else that you reviewed? No, sir. Have you reviewed any videotapes? I have not. Have you reviewed any audio tapes? I have not. Have you reviewed the autopsy report? I have not. Okay. It may have been in the investigative, hang on, because it may have been in with the investigative report. I know that I've seen a description of it at some point, so described in the incident report. No, I don't see it there, so I know that it was probably described in here when they went back to talk to her the second day, because I know they talked about it with her. Okay, did you receive any medical records from George Torres? No, I did not. And explain to me exactly what your title is. I'm the Chief Medical Officer. And what does that mean? It means that I'm in charge of all of the medical staff. Is your job basically administrative duties? That's a portion of it, but that's probably the smallest portion of my job. What are the other parts of your job besides the small portion for administration? Yes, so I work 7 days a week in the crisis stabilization unit in Salt Lake in Lake City, Florida. I run that unit. We have approximately 30 patients there that I see during the week and on holidays and on weekends. Go ahead. Are those patients that have come in over the weekend that are in some form of crisis? They come in and out. Yes, sir. Okay, is there a limited number of time that they can stay in the facility in Lake City? There's no specific time, specific limited amount of time. We are a short-term treatment facility. We are a Baker Act receiving facility, so the majority of our patients are on Baker Act. Our average length of stay is typically probably 3 to 5 days. We do have some outliers that do stay much longer than that if we're holding them specifically to transfer to another facility, such as one of the state hospitals. They will end up staying longer than that. But our typical patients will only stay, 3 to 5 days, maybe a week, long enough. Would it be fair to say that's probably 95% of the patients at the facility just stay short term? It's actually probably 60 to 65%. Okay, and you would treat them by talking to them and medication? Correct. We have therapists, we have recreational therapy, we have psychotherapy, we have medication management with them, we do family therapy. We try to address all their issues. Okay, so how much of your workload would you say is attributed to Lake City Crisis Stabilization Facility? Well, Monday through Friday, I'm there 50% of my time. So every morning, and then I'm there on the weekends in the morning. Also, more than 50% of my time is related to that. All right, what is the other time? My forensic work. Now, what do you mean by forensic work? So, forensic psychiatry is an area of psychiatry where psychiatry intersects with the law. So, anytime there's a legal case that has some sort of psychiatric question, whether it be the civil arena or the criminal arena. Are you a psychiatrist? Yes, sir. Okay. Now, I know you've got a couple of experts on our side. We've got a couple of experts on our side. Dr. Julie Harper. Do you know her? I do not. You know what her title is? I believe it's a psychologist, isn't she? And the question then says, I think a forensic psychologist. And the other experts we got is Dr. Michael Brandon. Do you know him? I do not. Do you know what his title is? I do not. I think he is a forensic psychologist as well. Okay. Do you explain to me what the difference between your position as a forensic psychiatrist and their position as a forensic psychologist? So I'm an MD, and they're not. What are they? They can be PsyDs, they can be psych PsyDs, they can be psych, but they're not MDs. I'm not even struggling. It's too late. They didn't go to medical school, so psychologists typically do therapy, but they don't prescribe medication or understand medical issues, so to speak. Yeah. But they typically do testing, psychological testing and therapy. Is there a big difference in the roles, the two separate roles, psychiatrist and psychologist, and their roles for what? For treatment in the forensic field? Sure. We're both asked to do evaluations. They do testing, psychological testing when it's indicated, which is not always indicated if there's a cognitive issue going on. They can do that, or personality issues and come into play with regards to psychological testing can be helpful. They're where we have a better understanding of the medicines and any medical aspects of the individuals. Okay, and then you said you do administrative roles, and you said you did 50% or more of your work at the Lake City, Florida Crisis Stability Center, and then you said you do forensic work as a forensic psychiatrist. What percentage of your work is a forensic psychiatrist? I have no idea, probably 45%. And that would involve, go ahead, 45% of your work is forensic psychiatry? Probably 50-50. It just depends on the week, in all honesty. Because if I have a trial going on, or a lot of depositions, traveling to Orlando to see somebody, then, I shift things around and more time to be dedicated this week to forensic work as opposed to, I maybe have somebody cover patients that one day, so I do less clinical work this week. That just depends week to week. So as a forensic psychiatrist, doing this forensic work, is it mostly related to proceed? I do a lot of competency to proceed, yes. I also do a lot of guardianship evaluations. Those are probably the majority of the work that I do, in all honesty. Now, guardianship evaluations, I assume that's where family have filled some petition with the court that one of their family members doesn't have the ability to care for themselves or manage their affairs for themselves, and they're asking the court to make a determination to appoint one of the family members to oversee. Yes, typically that's the family that filed, or more recently, it's been facilities. So I think there's been some kind of change in their ability to get reimbursement from different payer sources unless they seek guardianship of individuals. So if there are individuals in their facility that don't have families, the facility will file to have guardianship and have a guardian appointed. So if they're a nursing home or somewhere like that, correct, yes. Okay. And literally over the last 2 years, the majority of the evaluations have been coming from facilities. It's been a higher number. So I think something has changed with regards to their payer sources, honestly. what percentage would you say of your forensic psychiatry work is related to either the guardianship or the competency proceedings? Oh, I don't know. I don't keep track of it that way, in all honesty. Well, take your best guess. Probably half my forensic work is made up by 2 of those. All right. What's the other half? I do sanity at the time of the crime, competency to be executed evaluations. I'm appointed by the governor to do those. I do personal injury cases. I do medical malpractice. I did a lot of the tobacco cases against big tobacco. So just any number, anything in the okay. And have you ever testified in court? Numerous times. Yes. How many times would you say you've testified? Hundreds, if not over 1,000. Numerous, lots in criminal cases, criminal and civil. Yes. What percentage of the time you've testified were in criminal courts cases? In court, I'm not sure. In all honesty, I have no idea. Would it be less than 20? No. It's give us I'm guessing, okay. I'm guessing it would probably be 60%. Okay, and that is mainly in competency to proceed cases, mainly because those are the most common. Although I have to say they did not used to be most common in. They're the most common evaluations I do, but they're not typically the most common evaluations that would have testimony. Because in the past, they would get 3 evaluations and not have testimony, but here, more recently, been doing 2 evaluations and having testimony. Okay, so a lot of times you wouldn't testify, you would just submit a report. Correct. And that would be sufficient. It would be accepted by both parties, your opinions. Yes. Okay, and then you said you've done some work outside of the criminal arena. You said it's about 50% of the work you do. Of the civil work, again, I'm guessing, so I don't remember what percentage I assigned to that because I'm just guessing. Okay. In the criminal cases, do you testify primarily for the state? I'm called by both sides. All right. How many times have you been called by the defense as a witness in a trial? I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. I've been doing this for 20-something years. I have absolutely no idea. You don't keep any kind of records of that? No, sir. Are you asked about that from time to time by lawyers about work you've done? Yes. Okay, in criminal cases, what opinions are you asked to render? I think we just went through that. Competency to proceed, sanity at the time of the crime. Okay. And you think the percentage that you testify for the state is about 50-50 with the time you spent testifying for the defense? It's probably weighted towards the state. The times, it depends on your question. So the times that I've been hired is probably more weighted towards the state. The times that I've testified, I have actually no idea because, again, a lot of times I don't testify. Okay. And what have you been, you said you've testified as an expert. Have you testified, I assume, as an expert those hundreds of times, almost 1,000 times as an expert? Yes, I also testified every week as a treating physician through our Baker Act court. Okay, well, I'm referring to right now to criminal trials, which is a jury that's been in panel. Sure. What do you qualify as an expert to testify about? I've been qualified to testify with regards to psychiatric issues, anything under the umbrella of forensic psychiatry. So any type of psychiatric issue that you're having questions about, competency questions, diagnosis. Well, I know usually in criminal case it would involve competency or either insanity. Correct. Are there any other ways you would be allowed to testify in a criminal case other than for competency or insanity? I have done mitigation and aggravating factors. So you're talking about it sentencing. Correct, in criminal. Okay. So you would testify, what would be aggravating factors in terms of forensic psychology? I don't know. You would have to ask a forensic psychologist. Forensic psychologist, psychiatrist. What would be aggravating? It could be anything. So you would have to give me an example. You have your statutory aggravating factors. So you have, non-statutory aggravating factors. So would it be some kind of diagnosis that you would give? No. I can comment on their upbringing, their education background, any of those issues or factors. You're never called to testify as a diagnosing someone with some sort of personality trait. Yes, I can be. As an aggravating or mitigator, yes, that can also be an aggravating or mitigator, sure. Okay, as it relates to that diagnosis with some type of personality, how often are you asked to do that? Every case, as even a competency case asks for a diagnosis. Okay, and what are generally the diagnoses in these types of cases? There is no general diagnosis. Each individual is different. I don't go in with any kind of notion that there is a general diagnosis. Each individual is different. Can you give me one diagnosis that you would render in a criminal case? Schizophrenia, alcohol use, alcohol abuse, or use. There is no diagnosis of alcohol abuse anymore. We don't use that. It's alcohol use disorder is the official diagnosis. Okay, so schizophrenia or alcohol use disorder, any other type of diagnoses? There are thousands of them. Anything in the DSM-5 TR is fair game, any diagnosis. I understand, but there would seem to be some kind of common diagnosis you would have in the criminal realm that would come up before a jury. He is asking just name every diagnosis, right? This is crazy. Antisocial personality disorder, but each individual is different. Some of those and some don't have those. Are you allowed to render those types of opinions before a jury? Yes. Okay, so I've got schizophrenia, alcohol use disorder, antisocial personality disorder, anything else that is common, fairly common diagnosis on your part in criminal case. You just asked me, are there any diagnoses? I'm not telling you those are common ones on my part. Each individual is different, so I approach them and evaluate them and diagnose them based on what presentation they have. Okay. Anything else you want to say about your testimony that you feel makes you an expert in the field in which you're about to render opinions? No, I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have. Have you ever testified in a battered spouse syndrome situation? I have. And how many times? I think I testified recently to the fact that it was between 5 to 10 times, but I testified to that and thinking about it, I've actually involved in a lot more cases where it isn't the kind of main focus of the case, so I think the number is higher than that. All right, but you believe the fair estimate would be 5 to 10 times? No, I just said I believe it's more than that. Okay, but you've testified that somebody suffers as a battered spouse. Suffers or didn't, under that syndrome, correct. So it's not 5 to 10, what would the number be? I'm not sure. Again, I don't keep track of that over however long I've done that. But a lot of, intimate violence cases involved. Would you say under 20? I'm not sure. Well, ma'am, you've got to give me some type of number. I'm not sure. Would you say under 50? Yes, probably under 50. Okay, so you think you've testified about battered spouse in 50 cases before a jury. I didn't say before a jury. It may have been a bench trial. I said that. It might have been a deposition, but I believe I've testified with regards to that, yes. Okay, in front of a jury, how many times have you testified as an expert about battered spouse syndrome? No idea. Would it be less than 10? I have absolutely no idea. I'd be guessing. I'm just guessing at these numbers, so I have no idea. Well, how long have you been rendering opinions that people suffer from battered spouse syndrome? Since my training? Excuse me? Since my training in 1998, we were trained on it. All right, what training have you received regarding battered spouse syndrome? So we received training on it during our psychiatric residency, and then I'm very active in the Florida Psychiatric Society, and I actually presented numerous times on domestic violence at their meeting. Of note here, you notice that James Owens is suddenly able to say battered spouse syndrome instead of battered woman. All right, tell me about the training at the psychiatric facility. What was the training regarding battered spouse? Just generalized training, just like you learn about antidepressants, we learn about generalized anxiety disorders. So we have training. Was there a class on that or just like some seminars on it? Yes, we would have had seminars. We had lectures during the week as residents. Okay, all right. So we go to lecture series. We would have been lectured on that, correct. So during the psychiatric residency, how much time did you spend on lectures on battered spouse? Oh, I have no idea. That was 20-something years ago. No idea. Would you say less than 10 hours? I have no idea. Okay, is it possible it was less than 10 hours? No, not over a 4-year period of time, no. Okay, you didn't take any class on the battered spouse syndrome, did you? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Did you take a course during your psychological residency that was on battered spouse syndrome? I didn't do a psychological residency. I did a psychiatric residency, and yes, that's what I'm telling you, it was part of our lecture series, yes. Okay. And then you mentioned Florida Psychiatric Society, that's correct. And what training did you receive in regards to that? I didn't. I gave the training. On battered spouse syndrome, on domestic violence, and that was included in the training, correct. All right, and where did you learn about battered spouse syndrome? I think we just talked about it, and I also did research online with my presentation partner, so we would update out our slides because we did the presentation. As part of your licensing for the state of Florida, to maintain your medical license, you have mandatory continued medical education courses that you have to take. And one of them is a 2-hour domestic violence course that you have to complete every 2 years when you renew your license. And so we would have presented every 2 years at the Florida Psychiatric Society meetings to provide that our members that education. So that would have been for their relicensing. And we did that for probably 4 or 5 cycles before we handed that off to someone else to do the presentation. So you would actually do the presenting to other medical professionals for their CMEs for their credits on domestic violence. That's correct. Okay, do you have those slides or PowerPoints? I do not. Dr. Gilnoy will have them still because we stopped doing it about 4 years ago, I believe. We handed that off. I can see if Dr. Gilnoy has them still. Is he with your office? She? No. She is a psychiatrist at North Florida Regional Medical Center. Is that in Jacksonville? No, sir. It's here in Gainesville. Okay, then spell her last name. Ginory. Okay, all right. As it relates to Sarah Boone, do you have any diagnosis that relates to her? No. She told me that she previously diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, so that would be in there. She's been prescribed, and I'm too tired for that word. Analoxic for that to help treat her symptoms. Whether generalized anxiety disorder versus an adjustment disorder to her being in the facility is questionable for me in all honesty. Whether it is a generalized anxiety disorder versus an adjustment disorder to her being in the facility is questionable for me in all honesty. So there's the part that he's saying changed. But I haven't had time to go through everything thoroughly since I just saw her 2 days ago and process everything in all honesty. I think that she has also narcissistic personality traits was evident in the evaluation, and those would be the 2 major diagnoses. So, from my understanding, what you just said, yeah, I agree with the general anxiety disorder that she's been diagnosed with. No! I said it would be a generalized anxiety disorder versus an adjustment disorder, and that I hadn't had time to fully formulate that opinion out. What? What do you need? I need time to go through my notes and think about it and processes, but I've had other depositions, as you're aware yesterday. So I had to prepare for those and go through that. I've not had time to process through all of my notes prior to this deposition today. Well, doctor, I'm not trying to be inconvenient. You know the judge set for October 7th for jury selection. I know. Okay. But I didn't anticipate your testimony would be until later. You know, maybe we could discontinue your deposition and then reset it when you've got time to review, because obviously I'm not going to want to take your deposition and have other opinions that are not going to be covered. Mr. J, what is your position? Mr. J, conducting discovery after the jury trial starts is completely unacceptable to me, so that's my position. If she needs to issue a supplemental report, if there's some need for a second deposition, we can address that. But it would be my position that we need to get this done because the state doesn't have any appellate rights once the jury is sworn and jeopardy attaches. Well, you obviously understand my position. I'd like to finish the deposition today as well, but she is holding out that she may have other opinions and other diagnoses after she has had more time to think, review the paperwork. Then obviously that creates an issue. The witness says, but if that happens, I can bring that forward and we can add it to your deposition at that point if my opinions change after having reviewed further. Mr. J. Mr. J says, I think we need to plow ahead. This is our time with her. The court reporter is prepared to give us a transcript by the end of the weekend. If something needs to be amended, then she can A, issue a report, and then B, if you need to take a deposition, an abbreviated deposition on the limited subject matter she is not prepared to testify about on today, then we can do that. But the notion of holding a deposition today that is set for 3 hours and then doing a 3-hour deposition during trial, especially after jeopardy is attached, is not what the state would do. Mr. Owens, I'm not suggesting that, Mr. J. Well, we got the deposition during trial. I'm suggesting what you just said at the very beginning, which is let's finish, but if she has some supplement, she would take a brief second deposition as it relates to any new diagnosis or opinion. Mr. J, okay. What I'm understanding her to say is that right now there's been a previous diagnosis of an adjustment disorder in some of the records, and she just needs to review her records to see if she thinks that is the best diagnosis that she would give, as opposed to a generalized anxiety disorder diagnosis. Am I misstating that, Dr. Werner? The witness. You flipped them. Okay. The witness. So she's saying she has a generalized anxiety disorder. I'm saying I want to review it to see if I think there's more of an adjustment disorder to being on the correctional facility. An adjustment disorder to being in the correctional setting right now, and the stressors that she's under right now, as opposed to a generalized anxiety disorder. Okay. So on this topic, if something new comes up, then we can address it. But if you have other topics to depose her on, then I would suggest we go on. Mr. Owens, I agree. And Dr. Werner, let's chase the state attorney. Just let the state attorney know. I know that you know we are on short time. If you do review your notes over the weekend or whatnot, formulate any other opinions, just let the state attorney know and we'll address it absolutely. And she didn't. She did not let them know that she had decided it was adjustment disorder. That was the big argument here, but we're going to finish by Mr. Owens. Okay, so my understanding is you believe that she does suffer from either general anxiety disorder, which is consistent with what she's already been diagnosed with, or adjustment to the jail time as some kind of anxiety disorder. Correct. And okay, and then you base that on your interview with her plus a test that you gave her. My interview and her description of her presentation and what's going on with her and how she's felt being in the correctional setting. Correct. Okay, and that test you gave was the only test that you gave to her. Correct. I did a mental status examination. Okay, so you said that she believes she suffered from one of those, and that's your diagnosis. And then you mentioned narcissism and that she meets some of the traits of narcissism. Narcissistic personality disorder traits. Correct. Okay, tell me, what criteria exhibits that tends to meet her as a narcissist? Just her presentation, the way she describes over milestones in her life, and herself and her actions in an overly kind of self-grandiose manner, so to speak. Like when I asked her, for example, how far she had gone in school, rather than say a high school graduate, she said, well, I was about to sit for the entrance exam for college when my father died, so... What does that indicate to you by stating it that way instead of just answering, hey, I graduated from high school, what does that mean? Again, it's kind of a grandiose manner of saying I only graduated from high school, I didn't go to college, but she's talking about, she was going to go to college as opposed to answering the question. So she had some insecurities because she didn't go to college, but she presents it in a different light. So the majority of her employment was as a receptionist type job, which she would describe as being a front desk person. And then she continued to always describe herself almost every single position as the assistant to the office manager or the assistant to the owner of the company. So it was kind of elevating her position, although she was kind of that front desk person by her description. Okay. So these are just examples in the manner that she described kind of her relationship when she started to examine her relationship with her ex-husband, with George. There were ways that she described herself in her role in those relationships that was kind of elevating herself. So it was just a number of ways that she just described the way that she throughout the evaluation herself that appeared to have narcissistic traits. And I heard you say about how she answered the question about her education, how she answered the question about her employment, how she answered the question about her relationship with her ex-husband and George Torres. What other criteria would tend to indicate that she was a narcissist? I didn't say that she was. I said that she had narcissistic traits, and that was the examples. That was the examples I gave. All right, do you have any other criteria that she has narcissistic type traits? No, that was how she presented herself. Okay, so that's all you saw that relates to the criteria that she may have narcissism. As I sit here today without sitting down and specifically going through my notes, yes. Okay, do you think she suffers from a personality disorder? I did not diagnose her with a personality disorder. Do you feel like she met the criteria that would tend to support a diagnosis for a personality disorder? Well, we just went through one of the criteria for the narcissistic personality disorder. That is a personality disorder. Oh, any other criteria that you felt like she might meet other than disorder? Some other disorder? No. Okay. Do you feel like she suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder? She didn't give me criteria with regards to that. She discussed having fear and anxiety of his family and fear that they would come into the jail or have someone else come into the jail and harm them. She talked about that. And she spoke about, having recollections and remembering abuse from George during the evaluation. But those were the things that she spoke about that would go with that. But you don't believe that she suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder in your opinion. No, I would have to look through the back through my notes to see if she fully met that criteria. Can you explain why you don't think she suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder? No, I didn't say one way or the other. I would have to look back through my notes for that. Is that something you may, in the future, give an opinion about after some time reflecting and reviewing your notes? I may. Okay, and that's something you will let the lawyers know about if that changes. Yes. You may have already answered this. You said that you felt like she met the criteria for this anxiety disorder. Come on, Owens. No. She says, so she has the attributes and discussed with me. She has anxiety and symptoms of anxiety. And we discussed that. So whether those symptoms are attributed to generalized anxiety disorder, which is what she's said she's diagnosed with in the past as opposed to an adjustment disorder based on what is going on right now. What would the criteria that you would look for determine whether somebody suffered from an anxiety disorder? Again, generalized anxiety, feelings of restlessness, uneasiness, so all the general symptoms of anxiety, but it's typically related to numerous. With generalized anxiety disorder, the anxiety is not specific to one specific thing. It's generalized, just like it says. Anything you can make you anxious as opposed to an adjustment disorder. It's related to just what's going on right now. Was there any criteria that you felt like she exhibited that would indicate she suffered from an anxiety disorder? Well, again, I think the symptoms overlap for the two disorders and between the anxiety and the adjustment disorder. Correct. And those are restlessness and uneasiness. Yes, she has symptoms of anxiety, so whether it's attributable to generalized anxiety disorder right now, or whether it's just attributable to adjustment disorder right now is the question. The actual diagnosis is the question. The symptoms aren't the question. Okay, but the criteria would be restlessness, and I heard you say uneasiness. Is there any other criteria for anxiety or adjustment disorder? Yes, there are a lot of criteria for anxiety. Can be, an increased heart rate. So say any of the feelings of come along with anxiety, difficulty sleeping, decreased appetite, anything that comes with people being anxious. Okay. Now, there were 2 videos, and you say you didn't watch any videos. There was a video of George Torres lying in the bed, and Sarah wants her keys back. Did you have a chance? Were you able to hear me just now? I did. Okay, there was a video of George Torres lying in bed, and Sarah wants her keys back. Did you have a chance to review that video or speak to the state attorney about that? No, sir, I saw no videos. Where was he going to go with that? We watched the key video, right? In no way did that make Sarah look good. Was that played by the defense? I'm thinking that was played by the defense, right? Am I wrong? I don't know what they were trying to go for there. Like, that didn't make Sarah look good. I know that. Okay, you heard about Sarah talk about her drinking alcohol? Yes, I asked her about that. Correct. Do you have any opinions about that, about alcohol as it relates to Sarah Boone? Yes, I think Sarah Boone has an alcohol use disorder. And is that what we used to call alcoholism? We don't use the term alcoholism, but we used to use the term alcohol abuse, alcohol dependence, but we don't use those anymore. Now it's alcohol use disorder. How long has that term been used, alcohol use disorder? That came into effect with the DSM-5, and so I want to say probably 5 years now. I'd have to look. And your diagnosis says she suffers from alcohol use disorder. Yes. Is that based on the history she gave you? Yes. And didn't she acknowledge herself that she felt her drinking was problematic for her? Okay. When I asked her if she felt her drinking had been problematic for her, she said yes. Okay, do you have any opinion on the impact that Sarah's drinking had on her thinking and behavior on the night of this incident? Yes, I think it certainly affected her thought process and behavior. I think they were both drinking, and they acknowledged that. She acknowledged that. In terms of Sarah, what impact did Sarah's drinking have, in your opinion? If you have one, what impact did Sarah's drinking have on her thinking and behavior at the time of this event? Well, alcohol disinhibits people, so it probably disinhibited her. I don't know what her alcohol level was. They had, I think, 2 bottles of wine. What do you mean by disinhibits? It causes people to, or allows people to do things they wouldn't normally do. So the alcohol, in your opinion, may have impacted her thinking and behavior at the time of this event. It may have, but unfortunately for her, it was voluntary intoxication. No one forced her to drink. Right. It was voluntary, which isn't a defense. But the alcohol could have affected her thinking and behavior that night. Yes. And generally, you think it affects people in that they are disinhibited, and you would tend to do things they normally wouldn't do. Yes. Anything else you want to say about that? Alcohol, how does it affect her thinking and behavior at the time of this event? No. Again, I don't know what her alcohol blood level was at the time of the incident, so I can't tell you whether it did or did not affect her. Okay, and then I know that Sarah, before I came on the case, maybe as I was just coming on, she wrote a bunch of letters to the judge and the prosecutor. Do you have any clinical conclusions as it relates to her writing all those letters? Was he going to try to have some defense involving those letters? Not without having read them. Okay, on the subject of battered spouse syndrome, generally, what are the characteristics that are present in an individual suffering from battered spouse syndrome? What are the characteristics? Again, it depends on each individual, but they can be, it depends on the abuse. So it depends on, if they're intimidated, if they use economic abuse against them, they try to control them, if they isolate them. So it depends on each individual and their response to that. But typically, they're quiet and meek, kind of people describe it as walking on eggshells, trying to avoid conflict with the abuser. Any other general characteristics that you have that haven't mentioned relating to an individual? Generally, understand there is specifics, but generally the characteristics you would find in someone suffering from battered spouse syndrome. I mean, there are, statistically, they are, underemployed, they're undereducated, lower educated, lower. Although it crosses all boundaries, it is more prevalent in the lower socioeconomic status. There are lots of statistics on that. Any other characteristics other than what you've mentioned here today that you typically see in someone suffering from battered spouse syndrome? No, I think those are the big ones. All right, within the psychiatric and psychological community, what are the criticisms about battered spouse syndrome? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Well, it would seem in the field you would have some detractors from this condition. I know it's tied to post-traumatic stress. You're familiar with that. How battered spouse is tied to post-traumatic stress? Yes, it can be. Okay. I don't think there's an actual diagnosis in the book you mentioned, the medical book. There's one for post-traumatic stress disorder, but there isn't one for battered spouse syndrome, correct? Correct, that's correct. And battered spouse syndrome typically falls under post-traumatic stress disorder, is that correct? If they meet the criteria, they can qualify for that diagnosis, yes. Okay, and I guess it's just a general question in the field. Have you heard criticisms about forming opinions that somebody suffers from battered spouse or anything about that condition where they think it's not legitimate or that's what I'm getting at? No, I have not. I'm sorry? No. No criticisms. It's been in the law, it's been in medicine for several years. I think Lenore Walker is the one who first developed the theory, correct? I'm not sure. But it's been 20 some odd years or more, correct? Correct. He didn't say correct, but it's whatever. So you would agree, it's established in the psychiatric, psychological community that battered spouse is actually a syndrome. It's a pattern that we recognize. Yes, it's not a diagnosis, correct. Okay, and as a result of that pattern, the individual is suffering from it. I don't want to say they suffer from psychosis, but it's an altered mental state. They may, some of them. Okay. Have you ever not been allowed to testify as an expert on battered spouse syndrome? No. Or any other field, have you ever not been allowed to testify? No. What is your clinical treating experience of battered spouse syndrome? Again, we see them. I work on a crisis stabilization unit, so I see individuals who are involved with intimate partner violence on a regular basis. Maybe not every day, but certainly throughout the week. We'll have individuals admitted that have involved with intimate partner violence. So how many people would you say you've treated for battered spouse syndrome that you felt qualified for battered spouse syndrome? Oh, I don't know. Have you ever found that somebody qualified for battered spouse syndrome? Again, it's not a diagnosis, so it's not something I would document in medical records. I would document they were a victim or had been involved in intimate partner violence, which is what we call it. But have you ever formed a opinion with a patient that, yeah, that person right here, I understand they've got instances where they've been the victim of domestic violence, and so either they're coming to you for treatment or they're coming to you in a crisis type of situation. You find out that parts of the reason they're in a crisis is because of them being a victim of domestic violence. But in terms of you actually assessing somebody, seeing somebody, that you could be able to actually form an opinion, yes, I believe this individual suffers from battered spouse. Have you ever been able to do that and form an opinion that that's the case in any of your prior patients? That's quite a question. No. My opinion would have been that they were suffering from acute stress disorder, which is the actual diagnosis prior to post-traumatic stress disorder. Secondary to intimate partner violence would have been my opinion. I would not have. Have you ever testified in court that somebody suffered from battered spouse syndrome? I don't know that I've said those terms. Again, intimate partner violence, that's not a diagnosis. It's a collection of, symptoms that you identify on a report or report that they identify or report. Have you ever testified in court before that somebody did not meet the criteria for battered spouse syndrome? Again, no. I don't know what I would have used those words because it's not a diagnosis that I would testify to. It's a group of symptoms. Is it your opinion that Sarah Boone does not suffer from battered spouse syndrome? No. Again, I would have to go through my notes to fully formulate an opinion on that, but I think she is certainly involved in a violent relationship. But you haven't formed an opinion one way or the other about whether Sarah Boone suffers from battered spouse syndrome. I think I want to go through it to make sure that I believe that there was a lot of violence in a relationship. You described being threatened. She talked about, different kind of violent cycle and different aspects of it. So most likely she does. I don't have an issue with that. Okay, and then so to be fair from, And you only saw her for a couple hours, 2.5 hours, whatever the case may be, and you're trying your best, right? As we're all trying to do, do your job. And I know that you felt like, okay, she's been diagnosed with this anxiety disorder. You think maybe it's more adjustment to the jail situation. You felt like, so you have that opinion. But then you have the opinion that she tends to meet some of the criteria for narcissism. You said that, correct? And then I hear you saying that she may very well meet the criteria for battered spouse syndrome, but you may want to look at your notes and reflect on that a little bit more, correct? Correct. Are there any diagnoses beside those three that I just mentioned? Alcohol use disorder, we spoke about. Okay, all right, I forgot about that one. That would be the fourth one, correct. And that was based on what she told you in terms of her history with the use of alcohol. That's correct. Any other diagnoses other than those four? Potentially. No. And do you intend on expressing any other opinions other than what we've spoken about here today? No, I will answer questions I'm asked. That's her saying, do you intend on expressing other opinions? No, I will answer questions I'm asked. She's saying, the opinions I express, I don't intend to, mention things that I'm not asked. So you have to ask, right? That's the way I took it. Okay, well, I'm asking now. I mean, you're the expert. I'm not. You're the one that's evaluated her. You're the one that's given her the test. I don't know the field like you do. You know the field. I understand you said, hey, I want to think about this some more. I want to review my notes some more to see it. But in terms of right now, without any reflection, without any further, yes, sir. Reading of the notes, any other opinions that you could express in any form or fashion with all the experience, almost 1,000 jury trials, or 1,000 trial you've testified as an expert, anything else that comes to mind that may have an opinion that you may express in Sarah Boone's case. I swear I went and got up and got water, and it did not help. Anything else that I'm asked with regards to how her diagnosis come into play with regards to her case, I guess. Normally I have a monster that kind of keeps the coughing back, but it's late at night, and I don't want to drink another one. What other opinions do you believe you're qualified to express as it relates to Sarah Boone, the facts and circumstances related to this case? Anything with regards to her diagnosis, I guess. Of those four things we mentioned, correct. Okay, is there any other thing else you need to do in the case other than potentially go back through your notes and reflect on the interview and whatnot? I know we didn't record the interview, did we? Not that I was informed of. Okay, we should have done that, but we didn't. Better than that, the notes that you reviewed that were given to you, then the interview and the testing you did, correct? Is there anything else you would need? Yes, I believe I'm waiting to review the deposition of the defense expertise. Dr. Julie Harper, I believe so, and Dr. Michael Brannon. Yes, I believe I'm waiting for those deposition transcripts. Would it be important for you to review any other records, like medical records or anything of that nature? If there's anything that I have not reviewed that is disclosed that I would become aware of, I'd be happy to review it. What about jail medical records if they were to obtain those? Absolutely, be happy to review them. Anything else that you feel you would need that you haven't gotten to be able to express opinions in this case that you've mentioned here today? No, because I don't know what else is out there, so no. Okay, now you mentioned forensic being about 50% of your job responsibilities. Yes, sir. How much income do you make a year on forensic work? I have no idea. I believe last year, I'm guessing, I want to say it was probably 100, 150 maybe less than 100 that you make on forensic work? Correct. And the forensic work, is that a separate income from the salary that you're making at the facility? Correct. Okay, how do you split that up? How much do you make in terms of yearly salary at the facility you work at? I'm not sure what my salary is, in all honesty, because it just comes, but it all comes together. So I have my salary, my base salary. I get paid extra for working on the weekends, which I do because I don't have any other positions to do it. And then my forensic work and the bills are split 65% to me and 35% to the nonprofit. So if you do any forensic work, like on this case, and the profit for the income you receive, that's split up between 65% to you and 35% to the facility. That's correct. Okay, and how are you being paid in this case? What do you mean, how am I being paid? Is it's coin appointed work where you've got a flat fee, or is it by the hour? No, it's not coin appointed. All right, you're being paid by the state attorney's office? Yes, that's correct. And do you charge by the hour? Typically, yes. What is your hourly rate for the state attorney type work? I want to say, I don't do the billing, but I want to say $350 an hour. And you know how many hours you have in this case? I do not. Okay, I'd have to look. Is there a cap on the number of hours you can put on the case, or just as much as you need to be ready to testify at trial? I don't know, because in all honesty, again, I don't pay attention to that. My assistant deals with the financials and the billing. I just do the work. All right. And I know you're testifying here, but it sounds like you may be doing additional work in terms of reviewing your notes and reflecting on this matter. Yes. How many hours do you anticipate that type of work? It might take me a couple hours to go through this. If they actually want me to type a report, it'll take much longer. But they haven't indicated they actually want to type report at this point. Is it normal? Is it normal when you're testifying on something like this that you would need to report? I know in Sandy case, maybe, and in competency cases, maybe you need to submit a report, something like that. For a battered spouse, is that normal to submit a report? A lot of times I do. The majority of my cases, I submit reports. It's very rare that I don't submit a report, in all honesty. But I think this case was rushed in that getting her seen and getting the deposition, that there wasn't a report, which actually reading the report helps me formulate my opinions and get all ducks in a row with regards to symptoms and pointing out how everything kind of pulls together. Even for battered spouse cases, you submit a report. I would say yes. Okay, have you been asked to submit a report in this case? In the majority of cases, I submit reports. Okay, do you know how you would have been called to handle this case? I mean, why were you selected as opposed to any other person maybe in Orlando? You know Orlando is a pretty big city. You think they have found somebody there. Was there some reason that you had specialized expertise that you were selected over somebody here locally? I do not. Okay, are you... I don't know much about this area. You would have to ask them why they chose me. I can't. Okay, I'm from Pensacola area, so I'm not that familiar. Are you pretty well known in the geographical area of Orlando? Gainesville, maybe? Is that the reason? I don't do a lot of small cases in the Orlando area, but I do quite a few murder trials down there. Okay, so other than the couple hours that you intend to maybe reflect in your notes and anything else, any other work that you intend to do on the case? No, sir. Not that I'm aware of. And you've expressed all your opinions, at least generally, here today. Yes, sir. In your testimony at trial, is that more expensive than $350 an hour? I don't believe that it is. In state cases, I don't believe that is. I think it's statutory mandated, in all honesty, what they pay. Just double dog sure. You admit that you have no other opinions other than those you've been expressed here today. That I've been asked about. If I'm asked something else, that I'll offer it. And you've been provided all the resources you need to rely on and express your opinions. I have based an opinion on the resources that have been provided. If there's other things out there to be provided that may or may not change my opinion. And you agree that opinions are subjective, not based on authority, correct? It's based on my years of training and expertise, but that's your subjective opinion. Correct. Owens, ma'am, thank you for your time. Yes, sir, thank you. Mr. J? Mr. J's up. Hello, doctor. If you don't mind, can we turn to the Aspire records that were sent to you? Let me know when you have them. Got it. Cross-examination time. All right, on the bottom right corner of those records, is there page numbers? Yes, all right. So on pages 414, 19, 26, mine don't have those kind of numbers. Mine has 1 of 1, 2 of 2. Okay, in those records, did Aspire diagnose her with an adjustment disorder and alcohol intoxication? Yes. All right. So that's their diagnosis. And then we had the discussion with Ms. Boone on Wednesday about some earlier visit to a hospital where there are no records from, and they diagnosed her with an anxiety disorder and prescribed her Xanax. Is that not true? I don't believe it was a hospital. I think it was her primary care physician is what she testified to. And actually, I'll go backwards because they diagnosed her with was an adjustment disorder and alcohol intoxication with mild use disorder. So she was previously diagnosed with an adjustment disorder. Okay. They also did alcohol use disorder also. And her blood alcohol levels are what they are in the reports. You don't need to discuss that. Okay. In regards to the anxiety versus adjustment disorder, or both, it seems that there's a past diagnosis of each, correct? Correct. Sorry, I'm trying to fix this light. I don't know why the green screen's messed up, but it's right on the white and it's really bugging me. And for you to make a distinction between the two or whatever sickness there might be in that distinction, you would need more time to think about that, correct? Okay, all right. Now in regards to trauma, is trauma something that's subjective to the person who was the receiving end of it? And let me give an example. One spouse may come home to another spouse and call her a jerk. When that person was called a jerk, may think it was the end of the world, cry for a weekend, and file for divorce, whereas another person may brush it off as nothing. Is that a fair assessment or an example of how trauma works? Yes, each individual is different with regards to how they perceive things coming at them. So even in a violent relationship where both people in a relationship may be violent towards one another at different times, does it necessarily mean that they're internalizing that as trauma the way somebody else may or may not? Correct, not necessarily. So just because somebody is in an abusive physical relationship with another person, does that mean that they are lending towards the criteria of battered spouse syndrome? No, not necessarily. And I don't know that we've talked about it, but his efforts to control another person, is that a component of battered spouse syndrome? For the abuser, not the abusee. not for the victim. So, for example, if one partner has the other partner's identification papers and wouldn't turn them over to that person, is that an element of control, showing that that person is trying to exert control over that person that wants their identification papers? Yes. Giving gifts to another person in a relationship, partner A gives partner B a gift, and still, when it's convenient, considers that partner A's property, even though it was a gift to partner B. Can that be an element of trying to exert control over partner B? Yes, it's coercion, and a form of kind of financial abuse where you're, giving things and taking it away. Is isolation any relevance to a battered spouse situation? I know it's not a diagnosis, but if partner A is isolating partner B from friends, family, coworkers, does that have any influence on the decision by a healthcare professional whether to assign the battered spouse syndrome? Yes, that's one of the symptoms that you see in intimate partner violence. One of the ways of manipulating or controlling someone is isolating them from friends, peers, and relatives. How about if partner A is threatening partner B with legal processes such as arrest or following through with prosecutions? Is that an element of control that could be a criteria for battered spouse syndrome? Yes, again, it's threats and coercion. How about tearing the other partner down, verbally yelling partner B that he or she is worthless, I'm the best thing that's ever happened to you, you'll never get any better than me, those types of things. Does that have any influence in this battered spouse syndrome arena? Certainly, that lends itself to emotional abuse, which goes along, it's not just the physical abuse, it's financial abuse. It can be sexual abuse. It can be, you're talking about just different types of abuse. Can a partner in a relationship, even without being subjected to physical abuse, be made to feel worthless, out of control, and dependent on the partner that says those things to him or her? Yes. I must say, there is an extremely noticeable difference between Mr. J Mr. Owens when it comes to question and answer. A lot. Is there any sort of phraseology or words that describe that when there actually isn't physical violence necessarily, but just psychological violence, just emotional abuse? Is that a diagnosis in the DSM, or is it fit under PTSD or other trauma-related issues? No, it's not a diagnosis. Again, it's something that we would recognize, and you may have an adjustment disorder due to it, an acute stress reaction to that. So it's something that we would identify as one of the stressors that's causing the diagnosis, but it's not a diagnosis in and of itself. Prior to saying that a particular person has the signs or the recognized criteria for battered spouse syndrome, what sorts of things would you like to have as a petitioner besides just a history given by the person that is alleging they were abused? Right. Collateral from other individuals who were familiar with the relationship, medical records that indicate that they've had treatment for different injuries, if there's been physical violence or sexual violence, police reports. If there's been prior arrests or documents, police coming out to the home. A lot of times it would go to the home in years past, but not result in arrest. Sometimes they end up getting Baker acted when there's violence in the home as opposed to arrested. So any documents in it may lay out kind of a pattern of abuse and turmoil in the relationship. So anything that is not dependent on the credibility of the historian, correct. So for example, if there's a video that exists of partner A accusing partner B of stealing car keys and credibility of that defendant on the person accusing the other person of stealing the keys, even though there may be other possibilities such as just losing the keys, correct, misplacing them, yes, correct. So they're already calling out the car key video that James Owens tried to randomly bring up. When the historian of abuse has alcohol abuse disorder and gets acutely intoxicated, has narcissistic personality tendencies, even if they may not meet 5 criteria or what it is in the DSM-5 TR, are those red flags to take what that historian is saying with a grain of salt and require extra collaboration? They are just being in the criminal arena to start with is a red flag if you want to take everything and kind of cross-check everything that you're being told. Now, in particular, with the history that Miss Boone gave on Wednesday about the date of the offense, I know you were taking notes. Can you tell us, starting from when they woke up, I remember that being the question and kind of redirecting that. Take us through what she said was her day, and we can stop. Yes. It'll be a long narrative, and we can stop as needed. Okay, so she said she woke up in the morning, and he wanted to drink. She asked him if they could clean the house together in an effort to kind of distract him from that. She said they cleaned, did the laundry, vacuumed, went out to the back porch where they smoked, drank, and talked. Let me stop you there. Just so we're clear, and I don't know if we ever clarified it, on Wednesday, did we take that to mean smoking nicotine versus cannabis or something else? I took it to mean nicotine because she told me that she only smoked cannabis 3 times in her entire life. All right, go on from there. Thank you. So this was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon by this point because they actually didn't. She later went backwards and said she didn't know what time they got up. So it wasn't necessarily morning. So by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they had finished cleaning and they were on the back porch smoking, drinking, and talking. She couldn't recall if they ate lunch, but he got a bottle of wine. They'd had half a bottle from the night prior, and they got another bottle of wine. She said they went to Publix together, and then they were back on the back porch hanging out, and they had a dartboard and 2 beach chairs out there, and they were just spending time. Then she said he began thinking about life in general, got upset. She said she was afraid she would get hit, and asked if he wanted to call his daughters. She acknowledged that she knew his daughters would refuse to speak to him when he was drunk, so that upset him more. Then she thought she would show him her art. Oh, she thought the daughter would show him her art. But he then eventually called his brother. She said that he was sad, and that seemed to be a turning point for him. And then she said she pushed him and tried to get him to tell his brother that he had pulled her down the stairs the night before. Now, that's not what Sarah Boone was yelling. She was saying, tell him about when you choked me or something like that. She didn't talk about going down the stairs. This was new. This was added. This was added in response to the neighbors hearing the sound and them trying to come up with a reason for why there was a sound going down the stairs. And their defense was they got the date wrong, and the drunk Sarah Boone that doesn't know her own story for the day, she got the date right. And so I questioned her about that because she said, that she was worried about her getting upset and didn't want to upset him, but yet she said she was trying to get him to tell her brother that he had done something to her the night before, which seemed like to me that would be more upsetting for him. So even the psychologist, she's just doing things to make George mad. And she kind of denied that. She said that they stayed outside for a while and they decided to go inside. She said she was upset and introduced a puzzle that they were doing and they finished it. Then they did arts and crafts. And again, she offered that she was trying to unfocus him on hurting her and being upset, although he hadn't done anything at this point. She said she was entertaining him for herself to be okay. She said it was a normal day for her. She was afraid all day. He was sad and upset. They listened to music, but she doesn't like his music. It's angry rap music about killing and hurting things. But he was dancing with the dog. Then she said they were sitting on the couch, and she said at some point he went to get cigarettes and came home with more wine. So at some point he left the home and came back, but she wasn't clear where in this lineup that occurred. She said we were both laughing and having a good time. And then they were sitting in silence, and he said, "You're it." And she said, "Now we have to play hide and seek." And she was it. So she went upstairs to take a shower. Well, he was hiding, and she stayed up there for a while. Then she came down, she got out, and decided it had been enough time, and she got out of the shower and was coming down the stairs. See, this is different, right? Sarah was saying she was hiding in the shower, and this is saying that Sarah said she was taking a shower while he was hiding. And she said there was a suitcase, some clothes they had gotten out to donate, and they were trying to get that together, and it was on the floor in the living room, and she was coming down the stairs. She saw him kind of slipping into the suitcase as a hiding place. She said, I saw him in the suitcase and zipped him up, and we were laughing. She said he couldn't breathe, and I remembered feeling I couldn't breathe when she was choking or sodomizing. I was angry and shook the suitcase. I lost control of the suitcase, and it flipped. She said my son's baseball bat was right there. He put 2 fingers out, so it's still 2 fingers at this point. And then I hit them with the bat. I know, and she said, I know I'm definitely going to die. That's what it sounds like. That's what it feels like. I don't want to leave him face down, so I left him right side up. I felt if he got out, if he didn't care if I died, I was tired of it, tired of living in constant fear. I don't want to live like this anymore. She said that she took the video and a photo to show him terror, which because she intended to show him the next day, that's what she said about it. And then she indicated that she just felt like there was a generalized fear that she had physical harm from him throughout the day, every day. That's what she said, yes. Now, did you describe her relationship as sort of she was a nurturer who was going to save him? Yes, throughout the description of the relationship with him, yes, she did everything for him. He would lose his job, she'd go back, she would go to his boss and beg them to take him back and get his job back for him. So, she was, the kind of link to his family for him. She was kind of like this almost savior kind of presentation with regards to him. Did she ever describe that he tried to isolate her from her family? She did not describe that. Did she ever describe him trying to prevent her from seeing her son and spending time with her son and having her son come over? No, she did not say he tried to prevent that. Did she describe him ever isolating her from her friends, preventing her from going out and seeing her friends? No, I don't recall her saying that. Did she ever describe that there were times, however, that he would take her debit card and her credit card and go and spend money she did not want to be spent? I don't recall her telling me that. And that might have been something that was outside the scope of your evaluation, right? During the course of her relationship with George, did she describe that she went to her ex-husband's house as a place of solace to escape the situation with George? Yes. And that night of the incident, did she describe there was anything preventing her from going to her ex-husband's house or to a neighbor or anyone else when George was in the suitcase? No. Do people who suffer from abuse disorder or substance abuse disorder other than alcohol, do people in that situation tend to lie about their use and minimize their use? Yes. Can you elaborate on that? Yeah, they teach us at a medical school that if you kind of double what people tell you they use, you should expect that they're actually using double the amount and they'll minimize when you ask them how much. That's pretty typical. Okay, and again, you went through the text messages. Do you ever see anything in text messages attributable to the phone number that apparently is Miss Boone's when the recipient is either George, George's brother, a short Moses? I think describing George in a poor light and saying bad things about George. Yes, there are times when she's, even texting George and cursing, as I said, putting him down. Did George, again, we're attributing, he's using his handheld device at any particular time. We don't know that. But in any of these text messages that appear to be attributed to being sent by George, did he ever respond or retaliate and speak in the same tone the word she did? No, not that I recall. So George was never acting like Sarah. Okay, did she in these text messages ever threaten the process of arrest if he or members of his family did not do as she wished? I think. Again, if you don't know, that's fine. Yeah, I don't recall specifically. I think there may have been one incident that was brought up, but I don't recall specifically who was involved in the conversation. As far as controlling identification papers, one spouse or partner doing that to another, destroying things of value such as identification papers, is that a component of control that you can see in an abusive relationship? Yes, absolutely. Mr. J, I don't think I have any other questions. Owens, do you have any follow-up? Yeah, Dr. Werner, those are good questions by the prosecutor, and I've asked some questions. We're back to Owens, and you can already feel it. Is there anything else you can think of that we have not touched on that stands out in your mind that may you need to testify here today and let us know every possible that maybe you need to testify here today to let us know every potentiality? Of course, we want to know everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. Is there any other catch-all maybe that he forgot to mention, I forgot to mention, that you feel is somehow relevant, material, and important to this case? Not as I sit here today, no, sir. That's all the questions I have. Thank you. Mr. J, again, if you have a follow-up, thoughts based on reviewing your notes and kind of having time to settle in and doing that, even though you work a tremendous amount of hours, please let me know so that I can let Mr. Owens know. Absolutely. Also, I know that I just received Dr. Harper's deposition, that we were starting this deposition, so I will get that transcript to you. When I get Dr. Brennan's, I will get that to you. And if you formulate new opinions that you have not already told Mr. Owens that regards what he said, please let me know. Yes, absolutely. We'll likely have a conversation about that, so we'll know those things. All right, do you want to proofread or waive proofreading your deposition? I'll read, thank you. All right, Madam Court Reporter email address. Yes, please. Witness complies. All right, thanks everybody. The witness, thank you. Mr. Owens, thank you. All right, bye-bye. Whereupon the reading and signing of the video conference deposition was received. And the video conference deposition was concluded. So that's the whole thing. Owens is using this as one of his reasons for a new trial. She did come to a conclusion and didn't notify them. Right? The state will admit that. Owens is suggesting the state knew, at least in court he was, and the state disagreed. And Owens did get his new depositions in court that he said wouldn't happen. So, I don't know. What are your thoughts? I'm not sure how long this will be. I got to piece things together. But yeah, you probably have noticed by now, I'm probably not in chat. I did this at night. I scheduled it when I thought more people would be up, because I thought people were going to have some people are going to have a rough day today, and I wanted to put something out. So hopefully you enjoyed it, and see you in the next video.